Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the almost daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's talk Trump.
Hello and namaste, friends and listeners. It is I, your eccentric and slightly cabin feverish host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Before we launch into today's poorly organized segment, I wanted to give a real, honest, sincere, genuine fanboy shout out to John Oliver. He's literally sort of an inspiration. Like, this guy does an amazing show. It's tight, it's fast, it's always funny, it's always really well informed. And unless, of course, he's part and parcel of the NWO's echo chamber psyop of psyops, he seems to be earnestly, speaking truth to power. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I do concede that it is not impossible that some of our favorite media entities might actually be, puppets for the bad guys. But who knows, right? It's hard to tell. There are people convinced that our president is a puppet for the bad guys. And there are people convinced that our current president is the living incarnation of God himself and the fulfillment of the prophecy of a coming of a new Messiah. So there's a big range of opinion to work with. But in my humble opinion, from my own perspective, John Oliver is someone I look up to and admire as an entertainment personality, if I'm allowed to do that. I know that for a lot of people out there, anybody in the entertainment industry is automatically blacklisted because they're either stooges, unwitting tools for, or knowing accomplices of, the evil overlords. I don't pretend to know anything that I actually don't know. Just thought I'd put that out there right now. In case anybody listening in didn't realize, So, global shutdown madness. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean that earnestly. There's a madness, right? There's intense stress levels for everyone. There's emotional tragedy going around, directly and indirectly related to this virus. There's economic ups and downs, and there's death, as dear old Donnie himself pointed out in today's conference, and in the last one I think too. Lots of death. He says death really oddly. And maybe that's why I had that weird dream poem about not fearing death, not chasing it, I gotta actually write that down. Put a pin in that, folks. When I do get it all written down and polished up, I'll be sure to post it amongst the literary works I host on Wattpad, and maybe even do a special reading of. I need to find a good title for those segments when I read my material. I don't think it's clear right now. I'll have to address that in the updrafting of updrafts, which officially begins today for reals, I think. Knock on wood. Keep your fingers crossed for me, and yeah, I'm gonna do an episode or two, or maybe three during today, because I got not much else to do. But then I'm also in between massive cups of tea, because I'm, as you know, trying to quit coffee. that delicious, delicious, rich, toxic elixir, I'm going to actually confront the epic mountain of tedious work that is reviewing and editing all previous episodes, going all the way back to the beginning. And I haven't decided whether I'm going to work straight through in chronological order or if I'm going to bounce around or what. But we'll see what happens there. But I hope that you will tune in and check out the refurbished episodes when they go up, which of course I'm sure I'll be certain to make mention of, so that you don't miss out on the opportunity. It's something that's been a long time in the works, in the planning sort of phase and aspirational state of being, and is finally going to maybe, I say maybe, never say maybe, someone says, I forget who says that. Someone says never say maybe. It's unfair to the world and to yourself. Right. So, yeah, put a pin in that. We'll see how that works out in like 2 or 3 weeks. We are all on global lockdown, so it's not like we're hurting for time to do things, right? Now, for clarity, for anyone who might be confused, before we move forward with our social critique of the day, I want to point out that I personally do not doubt that people are actually getting sick. Okay? I'm not one of those people that thinks that the disease itself is some kind of hoax. Right? Just don't confuse me for those people. I do think people are sick. Now, whether this illness is something actually radically that new, or really just sort of like a sister bug to something that's always been around or has been around for a long time, that's, I guess up for debate a little bit. And of course, when it comes to all of the conflicting, competing, often mutually exclusive COVID-19 coronavirus conspiracy theories, claiming to know the absolute truth about what coronavirus really is, here's where I stand. I think the simple fact that the number and variety of explanatory theories has exponentially exploded during this time of pandemic awareness, right? We can call this Pandemic Awareness Quarter. And and make it a holiday. Every year we just socially distance from November to March, and we'll probably wipe out every communicable viral seasonal bug out there, right? Like, why haven't we done this before? Let's put a pin in that and return in the future time to explore that idea, because I'm kind of kidding, only half kidding. But so the conspiracy theories, which what I was actually addressing, I think that this pattern of exponential growth during this time when the disease itself is exponentially spreading and causing, for natural reasons, a bit of stress and fear and survival response in people. So this explosion of conspiracy theories, to me, indicates a level of engineering, right? Like somebody thought it'd be funny or interesting or scientifically revelatory or profitable, or profitable in terms of money or profitable in terms of power, as two different streams of income, let's say. They thought it would be worth the effort to create this cacophony, this maelstrom, this shitstorm, if I may use the term, of theories with competing theories and different levels of nefariousness, and just the exponentially new level of weird theories, some of which reach towards the way over the top, kind of like, that's too crazy to be real. and some of which are really firmly planted in things that are plausible, but also categorically not actually happening. Like, that's plausible, but I don't see that happening. I don't know. It worries me. So, right? Like, I've talked about it before, did a whole episode. I bring it up now just to be clear that my opinion is that the virus is real and that the shitstorm of stuff being peddled on social media about what it really is, that's probably not an accident. That's probably some kind of social media influence experiment / psychological operation, right? And the irony is that, in my humble opinion, the things that are kind of like so unlikely to be real as to be just, okay, we just gotta like go line them up and be like, should we just call this nonsense? Are the ones where it's like, well, they come in pairs and they mutually cancel each other out, right? Like, what? Like, the two theories can't coexist. It's a plot to assassinate Trump. It's a plot it's a plot to ruin Chinese economy. It's a plot to ruin American economy. I've talked about this before, but I digress. That's not what I want to talk about on today's episode. Sorry for slurping tea while I talk. It's just that I feel healthy, but I talk so much and I talk so like a theater performer and not like I'm on the radio, that my voice is trashed. And so I need a lot of the delightful throat soothing tea that helps me get through my episodes. So yesterday's announcement and today's press conference about it was a pleasant surprise to me. I kind of, almost foolishly, I guess, really expected Trump to get his way, to just, he's done what he's wanted to do about this since the get-go, right? He rejected the original batch of World Health Organization tests in order to make room and activate this corporate test development thing, which he then lagged on pushing. It's like he thinks things will just happen just because it occurs to him that they should happen. I don't know. His capitulation to the scientists was, of course, interesting, and it's, all the rage amongst the talking heads on the media. But and simultaneously, his strange, bizarre, insinuatory, like, it wasn't an outright accusation of anything. It was definitely like mobster speak. Like, somebody better check it out because some things have been going on kind of talk about the number of masks requested, where he referenced this industry capitalist professional who, in theory, knows the market better than anybody. Who knows if this guy's really as top tier as Trump makes him out to be? Because he only hires the best, only the best. So best are the best people that dozens of them have ended up in jail. They're so good. They're that good. But not to cast aspersions at any of the newest members of his team of the utmost best. But his claim, his quandary, his insinuation that places might be requesting more masks than they need because masks, what? Are they going out the back door? Is almost his phrasing, I believe. If that isn't a direct quote, I apologize. It's the whole approach that he's taking is so interestingly self-contradictory. But it's perfectly, if you really think about it, if you step back, if you step way back and really let go of your preconceived notions about him and observe his actions over time, he is infamously duplicitous. He's two-faced to the point of being obnoxious. He will be two-faced to you right in front of your face in the same paragraph and pass it off as perfectly normal, rational thinking. And then pick and choose his words later, and then pick and choose what he gets offended about later, and defend and rewrite history. He's so many gaslighting tactics over and over and over and over again. And then he shrugs and calls everybody, fake news, and he calls everybody dishonest people. He's the most dishonest perpetuator of fake news in modern history. This guy literally used to pretend to be his own marketing agent and spin fake news about himself at people to ingratiate others towards him. And now he's the president. So it's difficult to know what to take seriously and where to go, right? His revisionist approach to history completely denies how many unforced errors and fumbles and how much he really screwed the pooch between November and last month. And then since then, I mean, he's gone from calling it a total hoax, right, to a media exaggeration, to something that's going to go away like a miracle, even though he's not miraculously healing anyone, right? So where's the outrage, Messiah believers? Everybody who believes Trump is the Messiah should be flummoxed, confused, and outraged right now that he isn't healing the sick, feeding the hungry, and hanging out with the lepers and stuff. He should magically be able to hang out with, he has shook hands with COVID-19 positive people and not gotten COVID-19, apparently. But he could be bullshitting us, right? He could have never taken the test and then just made the administration pretend that he did. I don't know. That's not an accusation. That's just random speculative chat. Here's what I do know, and that I think I'm not alone in levying as a critique, because plenty of people, even conservatives and people over on the right, are criticizing Donald Trump for the way he's behaved in the past 3 months. To go from it's really no big deal, it's just the common cold, to it's a hoax, to it'll go away in a few weeks, to it'll miraculously disappear on its own, to he's a wartime president and this is a scary pandemic, everyone go get your vaccines, to it's not my job to make Enterprise do what Enterprise is supposed to do, to invoking the defense excuse me, one moment. Invoking the Defense Production Act, and then not doing anything with it for a week and a half, and then getting mad at GM, and then saying they've really showing them as an example of getting in line, but then not asking anyone else to produce anything. What did I say at the very beginning of all this, folks? Not to brag, not to toot my own horn, but to ask you, in all honesty, especially if you've been following along. If you haven't, imagine that you have. Imagine that 3.5 years ago, whatever it was, in 2016, just within days or weeks of Trump riding his golden escalator down to the lobby of Trump Tower with reportedly, I personally haven't confirmed it, right? But how much of modern journalism do you personally confirm? So reportedly, the people present for that live shot of him coming down the golden escalator were paid actors holding signs they didn't make themselves. Within within those early weeks, I posted on Facebook and shared on this. I started this podcast to share my thoughts about what he seemed to actually be trying to do. Because I've always shared my honest, unfiltered opinion. One of the reasons I think John Oliver is admirable, is someone to look up to, is because he's not of this country, he loves this country, he has strong opinions about this country, and he cherishes his own free speech right as a foreign-born permanent resident of this country to speak his mind and to try to uplift those who are doing, what seems to be the right thing to do, and to call out those in power who seem to be doing corrupt and not right things to do. Inspired by that, but adding this, layer of, hey, why aren't we talking about esoteric spiritual things? Why aren't we investigating these issues? Why aren't we healing the sick and feeding the poor instead of spending billions of dollars in political campaigns? Trillions of dollars, right? So, where are we? We are 21 minutes and 27 seconds into the show, and I've just been rambling about Trump being a weirdo. This situation is fascinating because it has genuinely become a worldwide state of emergency, but we kind of did it to ourselves, in as much as that, in all honesty, as I have already before and will again in future episodes, compare the numbers to the best of my ability to ascertain, according to authoritative sources that some may not agree with. The numbers on this virus are, yes, a little alarming, but also not that alarming when compared to some of the other things that kill us day in and day out, that we don't have an emergency panic mode breakdown about on the regular. Now, I disagree with anybody out there who's generating content that casts unwarranted doubt on what's going on, right? Like, I happen to actually indeed know some first responders through social media and in real life, and not a lot, but whenever I hear people saying such and such isn't happening because so-and-so sources say so, I'm like, really? Why don't you call up 100 first responders yourself? Do a survey. You'll remember back during the California wildfire apocalypse, the second year that firestorm season hit as strong as it did, that it just felt like the whole world was on fire, there was a resurgence of an already sort of annoyingly popular conspiracy theory. Now, I'm not pretending to know for a fact that this theory is 100% false. What I am asserting to you is that, having personally been here in California to witness the fires themselves up close, on multiple occasions, I believed that my own shelter was in danger, my own space, my own living, what's a good word for my own dwelling was potentially about to, be threatened by these fires. And I know lots of people around here, and I traveled in between those two fire seasons up north to where the fires were even worse. The conspiracy theories about how these fires were actually laser beams from satellites in space, and that they weren't natural wildfires at all, that all the burns were controlled burns, and that only X, Y, and Z types of things were burnt, were, to the best of my ability to ask around and verify here on the ground and bear witness to myself, not true. And my strongest evidence of this is that all the aerial photographs, which are very persuasive, let's say, don't actually match the topography and the locations. You know, like I've seen photographs attributed to being such and such place, and I'm like, I've been to that place. Doesn't look like that at all. Like, that's not what that place looks like. So that is not a picture of homes in that neighborhood or in that town or in that city. Now, again, I don't pretend to know for certain absolute terms anything, yo. Like, I'm not, but I do think it is my fair logical conclusion that the likelihood of those conspiracy theories being true is incredibly low. And then, you know, when I was up north, especially in the Russian River area where there was, you know, plenty of fire, I asked around. And I asked locals, I'm like, what do you guys think? And they're all like, that's such a load of hogwash. That's crazy. None of those things, as described, match what we've experienced here as survivors of the forest fire. So there's like a real life, and I love when people say I've done my research. I'm like, if you've just Googled shit and read what came up based on the words someone told you to search, then you haven't done research. You've just been spoon-fed content. I can spoon-feed you content, read this and that, and then you might feel like you've researched something, but that's not research. You want to research something? Call 100 firefighters. Like, literally look up 20 fire stations and ask them if you can survey 5 people at each station and get to 100 firefighters and ask them, right? Right now, I just today, for the first time, I added this to my growing epic list. I had heard that the virus was fake, but I had not heard an explicit statement claiming evidence or knowledge that hospitals are empty. And then I saw today, 1 second, please. I saw today a post claiming that there were reports, quote unquote, coming from first, frontline workers in the medical field, stating that what's all the hubbub, supposedly claiming that, what's everyone upset about, the hospitals are not, the hospitals are empty. Emergency rooms are empty, supposedly. Like, I can't claim to have called 100 emergency room nurses, but I have had interactions on social media with people who work in the field. And they're not saying that the hospitals are empty. Now, I'm not pretending to know anything more than I know. And I think that that's something we all need to, reconnect with, because too often I see people posting things that they are convinced of as fact, and that they've been, I think, convinced that they've verified or fact-checked it deep enough, when probably they haven't, right? Especially when it's a really outlandish claim, and they don't know anyone who might actually have been a witness to it, right? Like, for example, to go back in time a bit, the fires is a pretty good example. Like, people who believed that conspiracy didn't live where the fires happened. People who did not believe that conspiracy, people who lived where the fires happened, did not believe the conspiracy. That's the correct way to phrase it. Most of the people who believed in the laser beams from space are what's actually burning things, conspiracy. Those people who really, really believed in it, were convinced were true. Rarely, if at all, I can't claim that I know for 100% none of them did live anywhere near the fires, but the ones that I've heard from on social media did not live anywhere near the fires. And people that I've spoken to who are witness to the fires could not accept the they rejected it as garbage. They're like, I lived through this stuff. There were no laser beams. It was all really weird and natural and strange, for sure, but fire is a weird and strange natural occurrence. It does crazy things. People have seen a fire in a fireplace and think they understand how fire works. I can assure you, it's way more complicated than that. So, what's my point with that? There's this cacophony of conspiracy theories. I've already called out, like, community. You got to realize that when there's so many theories competing to be the absolute truth, it's worse than pick a lane. You can't just pick a lane, because they're all probably engineered to have a little bit of truthiness in them, and then a lot of nonsense you can't actually verify. Right? So, like, pick a lane is even to sort of progress the motif from that episode. It's almost like I'm being a little sarcastic, because it's more like realize that all the lanes you're in were set up for you, in my humble opinion. I could be wrong. I never pretend to think that I'm absolutely 100% right about anything. Now, here's something else to kind of like wrap things around here. I was pleasantly surprised that Trump extended the Trumptopia shutdown. I really, as I was saying at the beginning of the show today, just now, I really sort of expected him to just keep doing his best to fumble the ball. But I wonder if the extension is just a way to keep fumbling the ball by forcing everyone to stay home, and then also keeping the states, bidding against each other for equipment, and trying to get away with sneaky backroom deals with this. It's not a slush fund that's the bigger, larger, lion's share of this $2 trillion package that's just gone into action. Like, huzzah for the people that will actually be helped by this emergency package. And I believe genuinely many people will, because this shutdown has caused a lot of people to suddenly be unemployed where they otherwise would not have been, right? Of course, I'm not ignorant of the fact that many of those people might have also then been exposed dangerously to way more risk factor or risk exposure to this disease, and many, many, many more people very much likely would be sick. Still, not to sound pessimistic, 500,000 people a month are killed by air pollution. And there has not been this level of epic crazy. I mean, hooray that we've noticed that by shutting down all of our day-to-day activities, air pollution improves. It's great that we've obviously, the easiest thing you can do if you want clean, healthy air is to stop all the toxic waste dumping that you dump into the air. But we need to be able to get to a place where we can do something about air pollution vis-a-vis actual action about air pollution, and not as a side product of this stay-at-home order and this excessive fear-mongering campaign about something that is effectively just one of many things killing us. And arguably, although a little scary in its efficiency, not the most successful of things that kill us out there. As always, we need to make the best of where we find ourselves, right? Here we are. In Trumptopia, the shutdown will continue. That means the scam artists are going to bring third, fourth, fifth waves of scams to try and snag people's money. And that maybe, just maybe, the panic shopping will experience another wave of panic shopping. And that people living on the brink of economic disaster are now, currently, as we speak, crossing that boundary from barely hanging on to a thread and no longer hanging on. And we need to, as we remain calm in our social distancing, because I guess what I'm annoyed with is we could be doing this without all the fear mongering, right? Now I get it. People are stubborn and people are dubious and some people are just flat out irresponsible, right? To be polite about it. But so there's a fine line between giving serious warnings and like fear mongering hype. But we're getting, pardon me, gonna edit all that out in post. We're getting a heavy-handed fistful of both is what I find challenging and annoying. And we shouldn't have to put up with that, right? We should be able to responsibly figure out how to adapt to the pathogens in our world that are out to get us. Because to foolishly aspire to a world without bugs is ridiculous. I don't think the world works that way, right? And it would probably be ridiculously unhealthy for us in the long run if we strive to achieve that goal. I could be wrong. A completely hermetically sealed and antiseptically clean world might be amazing, but I somehow imagine that would be such disruptive imbalance that nature would rise up in her most furious forms to teach us a tough love lesson about being such assholes about controlling that which we do not have the right to control. And here's where I want to get to like a meta level with what I've got to ramble about today. So, right, we've got a lot of time in our hands. There's a lot of pain and stress and suffering, but there always is. Even before this, there was always a lot of pain, stress, and suffering. It's just being heightened and brought to our attention now. We've got the time on our hands now to really communicate with each other and to facilitate each other to see past ideology, past politics, past religion, past the mental constructs that this system we call society that we invented, but we also sort of inherited, has filled our minds with. And if we can achieve that, and we can really, really transcend, which is happening, by the way, this sort of thing happens anyways, as there's been plenty of evidence of. And I never want to sound like I neglect that side, right? What's that saying? And this will be my transition into closing. There's a meme that's been floating around for a little while now that I love, and I think I've yet to repost, but I have in my massive catalog of things I'd love to share. I just screen grab stuff and archive it, right? And then like never get around to sharing most of it. But something about how love is quieter than gunshots. It's everywhere, but you don't hear it as much. Something like that. And it's healthy for us to remember that and to seek out the good news. There are people all over the place banding together to keep an eye out on each other, to make this social distancing period as entertaining and as fun and as bearable as possible, to make sure that the least of us among us are not neglected and forgotten. And it's heartwarming and it's empowering. And it's also, if you really pause to think about it, kind of crazy that it takes this level of threat, this level of fear to bring us to that. But let's not get caught up in that, right? Let's not judge ourselves too harshly. Let us not judge each other too harshly. Let us instead discern how we can make the most of this opportunity, discern real facts from fake news, hype, fear-mongering, and psyop, and help each other navigate that challenging process, because as much as we've got to protect ourselves from the virus known as COVID-19, we also have to protect ourselves from being infected by the virulent ideological constructs being peddled out there. Everything from the unfortunate and kind of idiotic racist anger being expressed at people simply for being of Asian descent, to those who are hoarding and profiteering on what they hoard, to the general paranoia and us versus themism that can thrive in environments of fear. There's hope clearly shining its light in every place where there is darkness. And let us unite and all come together as sources of light. Because, the light is within each of us. Isn't that one of the universal lessons? So, my fellow Trumptopians, as our challenging period of self-isolation and of enduring the stress load of the disease itself and of enduring the crazy cacophony of conspiracy conditioning out there that's designed to keep us in fear, keep us engaged in division and conflict, and keep us busy arguing with each other instead of uniting to help each other survive this, to help each other thrive through this, to help each other heal through this. From long before COVID-19, I've been pointing out that the cosmic calling is simply this: to return to our natural abilities of spiritual healing, because that is what is missing, and that is arguably what can be found if we follow all of the corruption, all of the oppression, all of the trauma, all of the pain, all of the suffering. If we follow it deep enough, we realize that it stems from a deep, deep, deep spiritual need for healing, in my humble opinion. So, friends, as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Sorry for rambling for so long. I guess I'm just built for 45-minute long chats, and any shorter, and I just can't wrap my brain around it. No, I shouldn't say that, because I'm just enforcing that thought in my own manifesting, right? Don't want it. Okay, tune in, folks, because this next couple of weeks is going to be interesting. I've been teasing it a lot, I know, actually, for 3 years probably, because it was a thought original to the very first phase of development of this show, and I've been sort of getting bits and pieces of this updrafting in as we've come along, but I think the next few weeks can be really the show's gonna, I don't know what I'm saying. It might be a whole new show by the end of the process. It might not. It might just finally prove the point that I'm creating something not very many people want to consume. I don't know. Sorry, the end of this show totally waffled there. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry about my awkwardness. I mean what I say sincerely and authentically, even if it is couched in a work of fiction. The podcast is not fiction, but the literary works that later on reference the podcast as part of backstory are. So tune in for more information about that. Tune in for more episodes, more music by our imaginary DJ Zed, and more rants and raves and social criticism as we all share this moment together. And remember, folks, more important than ever now, we must help each other really deeply understand and realize that we are truly, truly in this together. Not just now, not just because of this disease, this pandemic, and this global shutdown, but because we've always been in this together. And the world has always been about us being in this together. That's what I gotta say about that this morning. And now to close out the show, here is a DJ Z track from the Early Years Volume 4, French House 101 remix, Joie de Vivre, La Discothèque.